If you're like me, who played and finished Kingdom Come Deliverance a couple of times, you'll probably notice just how overpowered the Master Strike is once the player gets used to the timing. A one-button move which when it starts rolling would steamroll just about any enemy in the game. It's so ridiculously OP that at one point in my second playthrough, my character in a nobleman's clothing was defeating enemies in full plate armor just using a mace with no shield. It's ridiculous, very unrealistic, and a heck a lot of fun. Regardless if you think that this might be an issue or not, I assume we can all agree that the Master Strike needs work, so here's my suggestion. First is to make enemies utilize feints. I'm sure you notice it yourself that even though feints are part of the official movesets in combat, enemies don't really use such a fundamental but powerful technique. You see, in the world of melee fighting, the stance or guard that one chooses during a fight has an expected type of attack attached to it. If the enemy is on high guard, for example, the expected attack is most likely a slash from above. Or if he's on wrath, then it's going to be a side cut from the direction where his sword is currently at, and so on. By changing the direction and or type of attack away from what's expected, not only would the attacker have a better chance of landing a hit, but more importantly, it would throw off the timing of any attempts at a Master Strike. In the early tutorial of the game, Captain Bernard instructs us to block in the direction of where the attack is coming from, but in practice you don't really need to do that. Regardless of what stance we're using, all we need to do is to press block at the right time and that's it, instant successful defense. I think this is the reason why a mod in the PC version of the game called Better Combat and Immersion Compilation require players to mirror the zone of where the attack is going to come from when attempting a Master Strike. So imagine if we combine that requirement with enemies knowing how to harness feinted attacks. I think what we'll have is a fairly challenging yet balanced one-hit counter worthy of its name. Let's take a look at a real-world example. This is a short clip from the Longsword and Broadsword finals at the VHG HEMA tournament back in 2018, uploaded by Skallagrim. Let's watch the clip first so we can see a good feint in action. Keep an eye on the guy at the right side. Did you guys see that? First, he feinted the swing on his right side and quickly slashed in the other direction. If this was a fight in KCD and my character is the one on the left, I would have pressed block the moment I saw his right swing if I wanted to try a Master Strike. Ended up getting hit. If this suggestion of mine ends up not being feasible or applicable in the game, hey, there's always the alternative. Just get rid of the Master Strike entirely. A huge chunk of my research for this topic involved watching about a dozen of HEMA tournament and duel videos just to observe how practitioners fight. And rarely did I ever see any of the Master Strikes in KCD applied in real life. Mainly because in practice, attack and defense exchanges happen really fast. The actions are so quick that in tournaments, they have a bunch of people keeping an eye on the match from every angle. Even if it was slowed down a bit like in the game, the quick reaction time from both parties would leave no room for such fancy moves, unless it's choreographed, which in my opinion constitute a lot of the Master Strikes in the game. Let's take a look at a couple of them. First, we have this one using a sword and shield. In real life, an experienced swordsman would not get hit at his midsection so easily, because one of the basic principles of fighting with a shield is to keep it in front of oneself for protection, even in the middle of a swing, which Captain Bernard clearly violated here. This one is even worse, a quick thrust to counter a downward axe swing. If this happened in real life, both the attacker and defender would get hit almost at the same time, which in HEMA is called a double. There's just no way that heavy axe head would be retracted, even if the opponent gets hit like what we see here. It's going to land somewhere and it's gonna hurt. And finally, in the realm of unrealism, we have a spinning shield parry followed up with a hilt strike, which is, good grief, this is just pure fantasy. I think Skallagrim explained it best as to why one should not do that.
No! Dumb! See? This is why you don't do that. I see that from a mile away and can immediately stab you.
You see, my friends, I think Kingdom Come Deliverance's combat system, even without the Master Strike, is extensive enough for Warhorse Studios developers to improve upon and add complexity. All of the building blocks in attacks and defense are already in place after all, and there are a lot of avenues in melee combat which they can explore and incorporate in future iterations of the game. In HEMA duels, fighters switch between stances really quick, like an exhilarating game of rock, paper, and scissors. See how many times this fighter switched stances? Why not speed up the combat in KCD, even just a bit, that reflects reality even more? With Master Strikes out of the way, combos are now actually useful, which also happens to be a staple move of excellent HEMA practitioners, like these ones for example. The devs can certainly build up on that if they wished. And what about evading attacks? Like I mentioned in a previous video, in the game it's relatively useless outside of a fist fight. Maybe they can rectify that and many more such improvements. In case the devs want to keep Master Strikes in place, that's fine too. I mean, they can just put an on and off switch in the game settings or something. That way, everyone's happy. If you made it this far into the video, chances are you played the game before, so I have a question for you. Were you able to execute Master Strikes with relative ease? Also, if you've enjoyed the game, is it because of all the fun things we can do, including exploits, or are you in it for the immersion? I definitely fall in the first camp, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Kindly let me know in the comments section. The links to all footages I watched, including the clips shown in this video, can be found in the description if you'd like to take a look. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, I highly recommend that you watch them to get a feel for how melee combat looks outside of a choreographed scenario. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.